name is Yehs, and I'm a cartoonist. I feel like an alcoholic.
So the interview today is like to place you in a personal context relative to the past of Comic-Con to your formation as an artist and also just how everything that influences yourself in your work and then also into Comic-Con as well.
Well, I think Comic-Con was really the pivotal moment of my life. I was 14 years old, and I saw a little tiny ad in the comic book. It said there's going to be a San Diego Comic-Con at the U.S. Grand Hotel. I had no idea what a Comic-Con was. I had no idea about any of this. And my friend in Los Angeles, where I was living, was named Shane Noguchi. And Shane actually collected comic books. I didn't. But he always thought I was always drawing, so he always thought I would be an artist. He always said, "Oh, you'll be an artist." And I said, "Well, I don't know." And then he said, "Hey, they're having this Comic-Con." So I talked my father, a Chinese engineer who's going to be 90 this coming February, into driving myself and my little sister, who later became a martial artist, down to San Diego in the basement of the U.S. Grand Hotel. And that was an eye-opener for me because I wasn't really involved in comics. But Ray Bradbury was one of the guests. And Ray Bradbury was sitting there at a little table, just the same as this room here. And Jack Kirby was at another little table, just like this. And I knew who Jack Kirby was. I didn't read Marvel, but I knew who he was because Shane Noguchi had the comics. But I read every book of Ray Bradbury. I had devoured these books. And so when I met Ray, I said, "Mr. Bradbury, I want to be a writer, but I can't spell. I have dyslexia. I later learned I have dyslexia. But at the time, in the 60s, we didn't know what dyslexia was." So Ray said, "It doesn't matter. They have editors." And I said, "What?" And I said, "Well, I can't really type. When you take typing in school, the teacher yells at you or hits you with a stick before we had child abuse. And they said, you look at the keys. If I don't look at the keys, I really can't spell." But that was the thing. And so I said, I don't really type really well. And Bradbury said, "Hey, you could write in longhand." And I said, "What?" "Yeah, you can write in longhand. And you make all the spelling mistakes you want. Make grammar mistakes. That's for the editors to figure out." And then I said, "Wow." Then I went up to Jack Kirby and I said, "Mr. Kirby," I thought this guy I was a small kid. And I didn't grow until I was 16. I was really short. And I thought Jack Kirby was towering like 6 feet, something like that. And I looked up to Jack and I said, "I want to be a comic book artist. I like to draw. Where do I go to college?" That's the big thing when your father's a Chinese engineer from China, go to college. And so Jack says, "Kid, there's no college for comic book artists. Just do it." Well, my father was not happy about this meeting because a few months later, I started my own publishing company. It's still going today. And I started doing my own books, and I've never had a job really. And my father is 90 in February, and he still thinks I should get a job.
So what did Comic-Con influence you to become a writer, or were there other influences before that?
Well, I think all the books that I read in the library, I read every book in the library when I was a kid in L.A. So I just was devouring every book from A to Z, kids' library. And so I always thought, wow, this is really cool to write. to write a story. And in 1985, and this is many years later, I decided to devote my life. I met Wally Amos, the famous Amos Cookies. He told me that 27 million American adults could not read. I couldn't believe it. I said, wow, 27 million American adults, people born in America, could not read. In 2000, so I started a group called Cartoonists Across America. And then we added And the World to our title in 1990. I was invited to Budapest, Hungary, and with all these cartoonists, including Jerry Robinson, who created the Joker. And I went to Budapest in 1990, and it was just really incredible. And then we started going around the world. But at that time, in 1985, 27 million American adults could not read. And I knew then that comics could be a gateway to reading. It really, it makes perfect sense to us, but it doesn't make perfect sense to the rest of the mainstream American education system, because the education system has always looked down on comics. And even though academics, oh yeah, comics are wonderful, the truth is we're still not, using comics. I brought one of my books. This won the Children's Choice Award in 2008. This book takes geography, which is very boring to most kids, and takes it state by state in a cartoon story. But, we take all the states. We sold 180,000 copies on our own as a comic book. And then I gave it to MBM and said, okay, run with this. They sold 6,000. It's not, we lack marketing in our industry. The comic book industry in America today it's sad, really sad, because we're selling a lot less of Superman. Take Superman. In 1970, Superman sold 2 million copies. Something, ask Mark Evanier, he'll correct my facts. But today, if a comic book sells 30,000, oh, that's great. That's crazy. We have 300 million people. When I spoke in 2010 in Chicago, I was speaking at a national literacy conference on adult education. So here I am, it's 2010, I've been on the road for 25 years. I said to Peter Waite, the head of Pro Literacy, the literacy group for adults, I said, Peter, how many adult illiterates do we have now? I thought the number had dropped because I've wasted 25 years of my life. He said, Phil, 60 million, 60 cannot read. 100 million of young people mostly do not read a single book in America. This should scare everybody.
So, going back to your childhood, did you use comic books to learn how to read and comic dyslexia?
I didn't. I love books. I love classic literature to this day. I love The Little Prince. It's my favorite book. And so it's an illustrated book, and Marie Sendak and all the rest. But I love Dumas. I love old dead people, I always say. But it's very funny because I love classic literature. I think it's the best literature, if I'm going to waste my time, I want to spend my time with something good. I always equated classic literature is difficult. I was reading Mark Twain, my favorite American author, to a group of people in a shopping mall. I was speaking in a painting mural in Wisconsin. And so I said to a kid, go in there and buy me at Barnes & Noble, buy me a Huckleberry Finn. He came out with a book. And I said, here, I'll read a passage. What did I learn? Mark Twain uses very difficult language. He uses, big words. And I saw the blank looks on the audience's face when I said, and then Huck was melancholy. And the audience was, what is he saying? Adults and kids. And I realized that, of course, our vocabulary is going down. Because we in America, we don't value the word. We value, no, I have Facebook, Twitter, all this stuff. And, everyone likes what I post on Facebook. They like. But only 2 or 3 people out of my 5,000 friends will say anything. And I really believe this is because people are unable to articulate complete thoughts.
So bringing this back to yourself, you said growing up with a Chinese first generation.
My father came from China in 1948.
So how did he respond, like especially during, this is probably during 60s, 70s when you're growing up, especially leading into the first Comic-Con. How did he feel like you pursuing art?
My father has been against it to this day. He's going to turn 90, and when I see him, I see him all the time. He always says, "Phil, get a job." And I say, "Okay, what will I do?" It's a running joke. For years, there was friction. I'm the eldest of 4. So when you have a Chinese father, my mother is Midwestern American, blonde hair, blue-eyed girl. And she's the same as the Chinese. The Midwest mentality and the Chinese mentality is the same. They don't believe in dreamers. They don't believe in drawing. They don't believe in filmmaking. They don't believe, they're practical. They're practical people. My mother would always say, get a job at Disneyland. You like comics. This is the kind of thinking that people have. As the years went on, after Comic-Con, how did it change my life? Well, after I went 2 years later, I was professional. So when I knew Dave Stevens, who did The Rocketeer, okay? I've since known Kevin Eastman, his Ninja Turtles, Matt Groening, his The Simpsons, and George Lucas, Steven Spielberg. You see, when you know these people as you're a young person, you find, well, what is your idea? Oh, I have an idea. A guy wears a helmet and he flies. That sounds crazy. You see, but it's a Rocketeer. It's beautifully drawn. He's from San Diego, at the time, and I started seeing my friends were doing all of these different things, and I started, well, it's really not a big deal. They make a drawing, and if somebody likes it, maybe it sells in the movie. Not all of my friends have made movies. I always tell a story when I talk at schools. I say, not all my friends were successful in the films. My friend Bob Burton created The Mystery Men. You remember it was a dud. It cost $80 million to make this film with Bill Macy, who was it? Ben Stiller and Janine Garofalo and all these people. But it was a flop, box office flop, because it cost $80 million to make. It only brought in $30 million. So that's a negative $50 million. But I didn't know that. I just assumed my friends were making everything they touched was gold. So I flew to Atlanta, where Bob lives, before I read Variety. I don't read Variety. And I got off the plane, and he picked me up in a Cadillac. And I got in the Cadillac, and I said, "Are we rich?" And he said, "Phil, the movie lost money." And I said, "Take me back to the airport." Because, wait a minute. But I always tell the story because not every one of my friends is rich. But I will say this. Out of 100 people that have made everything you've ever heard of, most of them I know.
Okay, so bringing that back, were you growing up, did you live here in San Diego? Or
No, I never lived in San Diego. I'm from Los Angeles. Then my parents moved to Seal Beach. I lived in Watts. And then outside of Watts was a very rough neighborhood. I'm half Asian, and my friends were little Chinese kids and we all did martial arts to survive. Not because we were, exercise, we love to exercise, because I went to a school was 99% black. At the time, no, I'm not prejudiced. I love all people, but at the time we had a few sociopaths, and they started the Crips. And these guys were mean guys. So we defended ourselves. We got very good at defending ourselves. So nobody messed around with us, even when we were small, because, we studied martial arts. And so I think from that experience, I really learned about people. You learn about life and death. Growing up in the neighborhood, I'm not prejudiced. I really think all people are wonderful. And I think if you have somebody that's a bully, bullying now is a big deal. I always say to kids, I said, look, just because the kid's teasing you, if he's just teasing verbally, just ignore it. If they tease you, they push you or something like that, then I'll teach you some little tricks. Because my sister became the third best martial artist in Taekwondo in America. She can't get a date. No, she's now dating in her 50s. But it was very funny because my sister really, loved. She liked the martial arts.
So I know you went to, your dad drove you and your sister to Comic-Con in the first Comic-Con, correct?
Yes, first one.
So first one. What was your major memory from that one? Like I know you brought about Brad Barrett. You brought about
Jack Kirby.
Jack Kirby.
That's my major memory. I went away from that convention. I didn't really pay attention to the other, fans. I didn't really know any comic book really other than Shane. In my neighborhood, reading wasn't really a hip thing to do. There weren't too many kids really devouring books. Now, there were some kids, like my childhood friend was Patrice Russian. She's a jazz musician. She's classically trained. I recently interviewed her from a magazine. Patrice was always into music, and she became very well known in music. But most of the kids in my neighborhood would love sports, baseball, basketball, football, whatever. And that was my memory of my childhood was, sports, a little fighting, but it wasn't really about art. It wasn't about comics. We weren't sitting around, let me draw. So I didn't really know all these guys that I've come to know. I've become good friends with. I didn't know any other comic guys. Until I was 16, I moved to Seal Beach. And then I was introduced to Orange County. And boy, what an eye-opener. I suddenly met comic writers, kids that want to be filmmakers. So I started out in Los Alamitos High School, where I later went on to Cal State Long Beach as a filmmaker. I was first as an artist, then they threw me out of the art department because I wasn't memorizing the Latin name for the arm. The teacher said, you don't know the Latin name? Get out. And I was drawing cartoons, and I was supposed to be drawing a model, and here we go. But I realized that I was lucky. I got into film, and I started realizing that I could do my own kind of storytelling. Because all I really cared about was telling stories. I didn't want to have anybody saying, this is the way you tell a story, with, our characters. I always have my own characters. And so all these years later, I just did everything myself. I published my own books. I did it myself.
So I know you opened up your publishing company right after you attended the first Comic-Con.
Yes, right.
What was your experiences with the later Comic-Cons through the 70s, if you attended any?
Well, when the Comic-Con was in the El Cortez Hotel, it was the best place in the world to have a convention because they had a swimming pool. And I would go out to the swimming pool and with my friend Oliver Christensen, who was Revilo is his pen name. I would just sit by the pool. And if a fan bought a book inside my table, my staff was there. They would come out, I'd sign the book. But I didn't, I really didn't participate too much. But that was the best time, there. Al Cortez, because it was very relaxed, Now San Diego has become Hollywood, a big deal, it's Hollywood, a lot of people and everything. But what I'm fighting for is we need to have a convention that's devoted to artists and writers. This was Shel Dorf. Shel is the guy who founded ComicCon. And his original vision was a place where a fan could meet a writer, an artist, and get to, talk to him. That was a wonderful experience. And then, of course, the convention became popular and everything else. But my problem with the convention is most of the people that come now, first of all, they love it to stand in line. You've already, you figure, psychologically, it's like an experiment. Which person likes to stand in line the longest? That's the person that's going to go to Comic-Con, especially next one. Because they're standing in line on Sunday all day to go get a ticket for the next one. This is the stupidest thing in the world. So we have decided, in my mind, I'm saying we're a process of elimination. You're now getting a great many people, but obviously not the brightest. And I'm sorry to say this, but we need to create a different convention, one without video games, film stars, TV stars, all this stuff. We have to create a convention about writers and artists and about the art form.
So going back to Shel Dorf, it's did you know a lot of the organizing members?
Yes, I knew all of them because right away I started publishing, at 16, and then by 19 I started my magazine, Uncle Jam, which I brought the new issue here. Uncle Jam started in 1973 when I was 19 years old, and I started it in college. And every year in the summer, we would do an issue devoted to comic books, comics and pop culture. And I interviewed all these guys. Ray Bradbury started writing for me in 1975, and it was really a thrill. And then everybody else followed. Bradbury said, "Oh, can I contribute some poems?" I said, "Wow." And then everybody, So in 1975, in 76, 77, Shel and all the Comic-Con, they were still growing. And they were, I was helping them. We were distributing our paper all throughout bookstores, which are hard to find now, bookstores and places where people read. And we were, very popular. And we were always promoting, we were always mainstreaming popular culture. It's hard to remember, kids don't even believe me, but when George Lucas did Star Wars, he was very nervous because he thought, oh, I wonder if anyone's going to see it. Because his first movie he made in college at USC called THX 1138 was a dud. It was terrible too. But it was really bad, my opinion. Of course, I don't like Star Wars, but anyway. The point is, George Lucas really needed Comic-Con. Nobody believes this, but Steven Spielberg, when he put out Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 78, he needed the fans. They didn't know. It wasn't a guarantee that, they weren't, now you say, oh, Spielberg and Lucas, they needed Comic-Con. No, people don't believe me, but it's true. They were really concerned this film is not going to have an audience. So it's really different how it is now.
So did you take part in organizing Comic-Con in the later 70s?
No, I didn't take part ever in organizing. What I did was I helped the Comic-Con and I always because we would interview. We would do an issue. We would interview George Lucas. We would interview whatever, because we felt, okay, we understand the fears of these guys, so we can mainstream. We can talk about what's your background, and that humanizes. And I think this is what needs to be done now. Now, young people, they like pop culture, but they don't know Jack Kirby, you see? So I think by interviewing the writers and the artists, we're running old interviews too, we can humanize the person who created the Star Wars or whatever, because it's because you don't know anything about the person. I'm convinced that you don't think about it. You just don't think about it. Spider-Man. Okay, Spider-Man. It's great. Spider-Man. You don't know who created Spider-Man. You don't know Jack Kirby created Spider-Man. Stan Lee can take all the credit he wants, but forget about Stan Lee. Stan Lee is like Walt Disney. Walt Disney, Little Mermaid. Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Little Mermaid. Walt Disney, Winnie the Pooh. Amy Milne wrote The Winnie the Pooh. You see? But in most people's minds, it's Walt Disney. I'm very much against these guys taking credit for what we do. Now, I know I'm in the minority because, everyone in popular culture today says, oh, Stan Lee, everything. And I say, wow, that's really sad, because there was an artist behind the creation. And I think as an artist, it's very sad when a country like ours, our country, we have the creator of animation. His name is Winsor McCay. Winsor McCay. He created animation single-handedly in Gertie the Dinosaur, 1909.
So going back to that question, on Comic-Con, as it goes into including things like video games, when do you think Comic-Con starts changing from those roots of like science fiction?
Yeah, probably about the
90s.
About the 90s, maybe the middle 90s. I mean, Mark Evanier, some historian, can, tell exactly when it happened. But I would say this about American culture. As our country has gone more towards, kids that are playing a video game or watching TV or watching movies on the little screen or whatever, their attention span shrinks. It gets very, very, very limited. I know my own sons. My sons were not raised to play video games. But I bought them a Nintendo. I bought them one game. And then I said, okay, you wanted a Nintendo that were 2, 4, and 6. Play it. All day. Play it. After 4 or 5 hours, they said, Dad, we want to go outside. Oh, I said, no, you play the Nintendo. By 6 hours, they hate the Nintendo. They never touched it again. Now, today, my 30-year-old is playing some video games. I know. But it's okay. My kids are all smart. They're all well-read because reverse psychology. But my nephew in San Diego here, I wish I could say the same. My nephew in San Diego is very similar to how I see most of the kids in America. They're being raised, the parents are saying, oh, he's quiet. They're quiet, they're okay. They're playing Mortal Kombat and they're 6 years old, they're okay. And this is ridiculous. But you go to Singapore, go to China, go to Malaysia, as I've done. My God. In the newspapers, there's an article, they're arguing video games. Are they good or bad? We're not arguing. In our country, we don't argue about any of this. It's academics may argue, but mainstream population, they argue about it. And in every country of the world, they know this is true. The popular culture, the video, the TV, the movies should be limited, very limited. I would defy anybody in America to say they limit their kids in anything. They don't limit what they eat. They don't limit, we have a rise in obesity rate. They don't limit what they're reading, what they're putting in their head. They're not reading anything. And so I'm saying if we're going to be competitive as a nation, we need to go back to the basics.
So, what do you feel Comics Fest fits into trying to reclaim that sense of
Well,
or debate or intellectual debate or argumentation?
yeah, because
how does Comics Fest fit into that?
well, Mike Towery was one of the original kids. You know, Mike was one of the original. Sheldorf had 12-year-old, kids to 17-year-old, Richard, Alf, and Mike. When he started the convention, it was really a group of kids. And Shell said, well, you kids want to have a convention? Sure, let's have a convention. I don't think anybody thought it was going to grow the way it did. But I will say this. All the original people understood what I know. That if we have a convention where a young guy like me can meet a Ray Bradbury or meet Jack Kirby, one-on-one, that's really incredible. That's really amazing. Because I bet Charles Schultz came one year. Frank Capra came one year. I mean, it's the lineup the show was able to get out of his phone book was incredible. He really got great film directors, Bob Clampett, Robert Heinlein, all these great writers and artists, and really incredible people. Many of them had never, had no idea that anybody even cared. Some of them were from the 1940s. And so they had a chance to come and meet fans, and we had a chance to meet them. And I think for us, it did so much for us because we had a chance to talk and listen to the panel or talk to them individually. And some of them became good friends. And I can't say enough about it. Now I've always gone to ComicCon,
Do you still go to Comic-Con
I
today?
still go. They give me a booth. They give me an Ink Pot Award a couple of years ago, and it's like I always joke. I mean, I'm there, but who knows? I'm there. I mean, the kids run by. They run by the table. We have our 12 fans, but it's very sad. It makes you want to cry sometimes. You think, wow, look at these people running, and they're all lining up. What are they in line for? And then they tell me, we're in line for a free bag. All right? And you can't make it up. You think, you're in line for a free bag. You lined up outside to get in for a free bag. Are you out of your mind? But you want to say, I don't, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Why would you line up outside, pay all this money to get inside to play a video game? Well, it's new. This is the mentality. And I say, wow, you have a chance. Not just me. Jerry Robinson created the Joker. Jerry Robinson passed away. But, a couple of years ago, he was sitting alone. Maybe one person. You have a chance to meet. I brought my best friend in the world was Alfredo Alcala. He used to do Conan and everything. He was Filipino. Alfredo was crazy. He was eccentric. He was a madman. But he was my best friend. A few years ago, he did a book before he died. He died in 2000. He did a book with Pete Conrad. Pete Conrad was the third man to walk on the moon. And here Pete Conrad and Alfredo Alcala doing this book. So I bought a lot of copies and I thought I'm going to make some money for once. We get to the convention, Pete's sitting there, Alfredo's sitting there. I say to the kid, 20-year-old kid, I said, would you like an autograph? This is the third man to walk on the moon. The kid says to me, I'm not making this up. No, I'm more interested in getting an autograph of Batman. Not George Clooney, not Adam West, a guy dressed up as Batman. And I say to the kid, he's 20, I call him a kid. I say, okay, the guy over there, is Batman? Yes, he's Batman. Can't you see? And I say, what's he going to do? Sign a paper, Batman? Yeah. Kid walks away. And I look at Pete, and Pete says, that's the first time anyone has said no to getting my autograph. I said, welcome to Comic-Con. And that's really true. Welcome to Comic-Con. What have we done? We created a society where an astronaut, a man who went to the moon, walked on the moon. It doesn't matter. So I think, I use that as an example all the time. I think unless we can get America culturally back with some logic, we're really in danger of creating a society where people do not respect a real achievement, but we respect a guy dressed up as Batman, or dressed up as Princess Leia or whatever. There's a place for fantasy, I understand. There's a place for reality. And I'm not so clear that we Americans understand what we've done, because we worship now the guy dressed as Batman, not the real Batman, not Adam West, but a guy dressed up, and that's what I see happening more and more, and that is not a good thing. It's not good at all. When you compare our conventions, I've been to China. I've been to France, Angoulême. I've been to Germany, Frankfurt Book Fair. I've been all over the world, Malaysia, Singapore. What I notice is that these people are like, wow, look at this art. Look at the drawing. In America, it's very few. They don't look at the art. They don't look at what you're doing. Neil Gaiman, I don't know Neil, but my friend in Singapore told me Neil Gaiman went to Singapore, had lions around the block. So that's great. That's what we Americans need to look at the rest of the world and realize, why are they smarter? Why are their kids smarter? They still like pop culture, but their kids are so much smarter. What is why? Why are they smarter? I was speaking at Malaysian University last year, or 2 years ago. I said, they always say Asians are smart because I'm half Chinese. I said, all Asians are the model minority. We're all smart, right? And I had a whole audience of mostly Asian kids. And they were laughing. I said, it's not we're smart. Our parents are mean. And then everybody cracked up because they realized it's not they're Asian. That's why they're smart. It's because the parents are saying, become a doctor, become a lawyer, study, study, study. It's crazy. But I understand because my father was the same. I didn't listen to my dad, but it's never mind. But it's very interesting because the work ethic is very strong in those cultures. And I think that's okay. It's okay to have a work ethic. I think American, and this is why I promote literacy, in America, we're too lax. And so our kids are just playing the video, doing all the stuff they do. And that's the reason American kids are falling behind. And we were talking, it's an election year. And so all the candidates are saying we have to promote education, as they do every 4 years. But nothing changes.
Direct this conversation back to you a bit
Sure.
more. I know we're talking since there's a lot of contentious political issues and forces this year, especially with the election.
Mm-hmm.
Did the 70s play a role in your formation?
Well, I've always been an activist. I realized I was a politician in college. I was a senator 2 years in a row. And I realized how corrupt politics are, even on the college level. So I got out of being a politician, second year, and I decided I would be an activist. I really idolized Nelson Mandela, who was in prison in South Africa. I really idolized Martin Luther King, who was an activist, got Lyndon Johnson to sign the Civil Rights Bill. I realized that Cesar Chavez did more for the rights of farm workers than any politician, you know? So I started thinking, that's a better role for me, is to be an activist. I don't have to, nobody owns me, and I don't have to have a job, which I like, and I can say what I want. And that's what I really try to be an activist. And I'm always talking about literacy because literacy is a key to change, to prosperity. To have a job, you need education.
Because I know you've used this influencer activism to use comics as a
yes,
form
absolutely.
To
I think comics are the best way, the best, bar none, the way to communicate to all people around the planet. Cartoons and comics, whether it's comic books, which is your thesis or your major, or a cartoon in the newspaper, when we used to have newspaper, is the best way to communicate, because the comic, the art and the picture, wow, it appeals to everyone. Everyone likes cartoons. I'm always amazed that people say, women, especially older women, say to me, I can't really read a comic book. I can't read it. I don't understand how to read it. And I think back, my friend Scott McCloud, Scott McCloud wrote a book called Understanding Comics. Well, Scott McCloud was a young kid in New York at the School of Visual Arts when his friend Adam Phillips invited me to come speak to Art Spiegelman's class. This is in 1982. And I spoke as I speak in here today. I was saying all these things today. Well, Art Spiegelman, I later had coffee with him and we became a little bit friendly. And I said, you should take Mouse out of this ridiculous art magazine called Raw and make it into a graphic novel. Because I championed the graphic novel. I did the first graphic novel in America in 1977. Okay, we started the talk with it. So what I said to Art was, do it as a graphic novel. It will be, accepted. And Art was arguing vehemently against this idea. He didn't believe it. Well, in 1985, Art Spiegelman won the Pulitzer Prize. He has never spoken to me again, but I have letters. I've put it on my website now. I put these letters because people think I'm making this up, like I'm delusional. Now, am I delusional? When I went up to Scott McCloud years later, who was doing Zot, okay? I walked up to this guy. I said, I really like Zot. It was a really good book. And Scott says, don't you remember me, Phil? I was taking you by bus to Art Spiegelman's class in 1982 with my friend Adam Phillips. I would like to say I remember everybody I met in 40 years, but I would lie. I cannot cannot remember everybody. It's just the way it is. And I looked at this guy and said, you were the kid that took me, He said, yeah, thanks. Your speech helped me. He wrote Understanding Comics, and he put my unicorn in the pyramid, the little blanket pyramid with all characters. I'm happy to say that I'm above, Frank the Unicorn is above Art Spiegelman in that pyramid.
So, because especially with Art Spiegelman and Mouse
Sure.
is part of that triumvirate of that zeitgeist in 1985, which takes place with Alan Moore's Watchmen,
Sure.
Frank Miller's
Sure.
Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think comics right now are due for that same sort of turnaround within 2012 or into the future?
I don't know. I think in America, it's very sad to say, but in America, unless we can increase the literacy rate, dramatically, it's very sad. I think what I tell my friends who are creators, as I say, don't worry if your books. I just next to Baton Lash, an old friend, here at this convention, I say, look, we're maybe not selling much here in America, independent people, but in China, in Singapore, and all these countries speak English. as a second language. More people speak English as a second language than all the rest of the world. You know, all the languages in the world, English is the second language. It's so good for me because I don't speak. I took French in school because pretty girls speak French, but I don't speak any French. I took a French 7, so just proving, you know, I'm an idiot. But I can tell you this, any country of the world, anywhere, I've been all around the world. I went to Israel in December. I was guest of Haifa Comics Convention. They don't maybe speak English, you know, really fluently like us, supposedly. But they speak enough. They read in English. So it's okay. I can sell books. So I say to creators in America, create, 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 and don't worry about translation. Take your books, go.
So the argument you're proposing is that American comics cannot survive within America.
I think they can. I think they can. I think the idea is American comics right now are dying. We're dying. You know, Newsweek just went out of business. Print is dead. My 28-year-old son told me the truth. You know, a few years ago, he said, "Dad, print is dead." I said, "No, it's not. I'm going to keep it going." But here's the thing. I think we have to get the rest of the world to, you know, pay for it. You know, we have to make a living. So we have to go around the world. And then when the whole world is doing well, I think then America, you know, maybe 10 years from now, American parents who aren't real bright now will say, "Oh, God, you know, we're now not 50th in literacy in the world, we're 150th, you see? And then maybe America, oh my God, we're in trouble." Right now, nobody takes us seriously. Nobody. I speak at all these conferences in America. Nobody takes us seriously. And it's sad. You know, academic people and professors and colleges and everybody, oh yeah, but you know, they don't really understand. You know, my friend is professor at Temple University. His name is John Lent, okay? He's been professor of communication for like 35, 40 years. His expertise is comics, okay? He interviews more cartoonists around the world than anyone on the planet. And I mean anywhere. Iraq, you know, Afghanistan, anywhere. Malaysia, Singapore, China, doesn't matter. He goes, you know, he's a tenured professor. And I was at his house last year. And when I was at his house, and it's an old friend of mine, I was saying, "John, what is the status of the college kids today?" Okay? This is Temple University in Philadelphia. He said, "Phil, it's so bad that I would fail 75% of the freshman class. But I can't because the dean says you can't fail the 75% of the class, so that's like, you know, all the kids. So dumb it down. So dumb it down." So he says, "I've already dumbed the course down. It's now for idiots. And now I'm supposed to dumb it down again." See, I know what my friends who are teachers and professors all over are facing in America. But I don't think that's the right answer. The right answer is we collectively have to work with students 5 years old. I have grandsons now. Now I have grandkids. 2 of them are, one is 5, one is going to turn 5 in December. The others are, you know, 1 years old. But this is like my own kids, when I influence my own kids. You ask me, do cartoons work? What do you think? They love cartoons. And they don't know that they're not supposed to love books. So guess what? We never turn the TV on when they come to our house. You know, we have books, lots of books. My friends write books and children's books and everything's signed to them, and, you know, it's great because they love it. They love it. And they always, of course, if you have little kids, you know this is true. A 5-year-old kid, wow, look at this book. But a 10-year-old or A little older, good luck. Good luck getting a 10-year-old to look at a book today, because he's already, doing this all the time, so that he's not interested because he thinks it's boring. That's a problem. It depends how we raise the kids. But my wife is a librarian, children's librarian in San Bernardino. I was sitting there yesterday in the children's room, and this has got me so angry. I never stop talking like this. There's never a day I don't talk about this. And I'm sitting in the children's room, and there are all these kids playing with toys. And I say, what are they doing? And the director, don't put this, well, with tape, so what? The director of the San Bernardino Library got a grant for some kind of grant, one of these theoretical PhD nonsense grants that put toys into the library. It's a way for kid to, I don't know if you know, some theory, Here's my answer to this. Get them out. Get all the toys out of the library. Libraries should be for books. Books, not computers. There's lots of computers in the library. Not computers. I know it's going to upset a lot of people. But here's a crazy idea. Books. That's what the library is for. You want to have toys? Go to McDonald's. They have a play thing or whatever. We have to really understand why this culture became stupid. Because our power for corporations have decided, McDonald's will never give a book away. I've asked them. They never give books in the Happy Meals. They always give a stupid toy. My kids used to get the stupid toy. We put them in the toy chest. They never play with them, ever. But we put them in the toy chest. You see, they believe, corporations in this country believe that Americans are instinctively very low intelligence. I say, if we are low intelligence, we can raise it.
So I'm going to redirect.
Redirect.
So going to Richard Alf, who recently passed away.
Yes.
Did you work a lot with Richard?
No, I didn't. I really didn't work with these guys at all. I reconnected with Richard at the 40th anniversary. When they had the convention and the 40th a couple of years ago. And Richard and I knew each other, but we worked close, and we reconnected. And, it's very tragic. It's very sad that, he got cancer and he died so suddenly. But I was at his funeral, went to his service and everything. But I would say, and maybe I'm more passionate now, I'm 58 now, because I'm seeing a lot of my friends. Some of them are obviously in their 90s, like Ray Bradbury, but many of them are in their 50s and they're dying. And I'm thinking, okay, we're on the planet now. We're alive now. We have to give for the future generations, your generation, your children, your grandchildren. We have to say these words. We have to. It's so important. We cannot forget the word and picture. That's what comics is. Comic books, your specialty, or cartoons, it doesn't matter. Words and pictures matter. And some guy recently showed me on the phone, the comic book, on the phone, the comic book page, and he's showing me panel by panel, because you can't see the whole page. So he's showing me a panel. I said, this is crap. Oh, Val, this is the latest thing. Don't be against technology. I said, this is crap. And when an artist draws a picture, we draw, for a single page or for a double page spread. We're drawing so your eye sees the whole thing. So this nonsense, but look at how cool it is. I can see it on my phone. I said, forget it. This is crazy. But there's this new technology. This is when I was a kid. They told me the new thing was creepy crawlers, this game, this poor group. And I said, what is this? oh, everybody's doing it. So I bought it. And I was stupid. You know, and I realized there always is going to be a new thing. But nothing is good. You know Rinsburg K? You know what Rinsburg K is?
No.
Okay, Little Nemo in Slumberland. The greatest comic strip ever drawn. Started in 1905. This is Winsor McKay. He creates animation in 1909. Google him. You're going to find out. In fact, Google recently, on his birthday, just a few days ago, used his logo, Little Nemo. Somebody told me this.
Like bringing it back to Richard Alf.
Sure.
You said you saw him at the 40th anniversary of ComicCon.
I did.
Do you remember what your last conversation with him was?
Well, I think we were on a panel. I think I was on a panel in San Diego Comic-Con with a lot of these guys who were here, and we were just, we were always talking about the old days. We saw like old people, old Kujer or whatever the word is. People always say, "Oh, it was better in the old days." I don't think it was better. I don't think so. I'm not really like that. I think some things were better. Some things were really not very good. And I think it's the same now. I'm surrounded by young people. I speak at schools. I always talk to young people. I have nothing against young people. And they're looking to old guys for guidance. So when they say, "What do you think about this?" I say, I don't know. I don't have a cell phone. They say, "Well, how do you exist without a cell phone?" I say, I exist very well. In fact, most of my friends are so old they don't even have computers. Sounds crazy, huh? And they don't miss it. And so the kid says, "Wow, how do you check your Facebook?" And I say, "Well, they don't have Facebook." So we have a conversation. But then I say to the kid, I say, I spend 4 or 5 hours every day in the heat right now in San Bernardino. It's been hot, okay? I'm painting outside the first McDonald's, okay, 100-foot mural. I had a stroke last year. So to get my hand back, I'm painting this mural. This is how my therapy. The doctors will, do this. I don't follow rules. I can't listen to, doctors, okay? So I said, I'll paint a mural 100 feet, and I'll take months to do it. Well, now my hand is back, and I'm going to paint the other side of the building. And it's great because as I work in the hot sun for 4 or 5 hours, high school kids come by and see me. And they say, "Wow, this is incredible." They don't help me. "Oh, wow, this is incredible." They walk away. And I always laugh. I say, "Would you like to paint?" They say, "It's hot." And I say, "Yeah, I know. But that's okay. I'm going to still paint." That's what I'm doing now.